Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, along with Katie Pavlich, Doug Schoen, Lawrence Jones, and Tom Shalhoub. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The 5. Fox News alert, President Trump and the First Lady set to make another unannounced stop after a surprise trip to visit troops in Iraq. You're looking at brand new video of the president's first visit to a combat zone as commander-in-chief. President Trump making the 11-hour flight under the cover of darkness on Air Force One. The lights were off, the window shades drawn, and with a military jet escort, President Trump addressing the troops and praising their efforts in the fight against ISIS.
The other reason I'm here today is to personally thank you and every service member throughout this region for the near elimination of the ISIS territorial caliphate in Iraq and in Syria. I looked at a map, and 2 years ago it was a lot of red all over that map, and now you have a couple little spots, and that's happening very quickly.
The president adding that he has no plans to pull troops out of Iraq and says the country can be used as a staging area to strike Islamic State. This comes after President Trump announced he's withdrawing troops out of Syria. He defended that move today, saying, quote, "A lot of people are going to come around to my way of thinking." And so we shall see if that happens. But that's kind of fun for the troops, right? Like a very moving experience to see the commander-in-chief.
They look like they really appreciate it. Now, I'm wondering, now, in your experience in the Bush administration, how far in advance do they have to plan these things? Is this something he could have? So this was in the works for a while. About
6 weeks, I think they had planned it, and then you keep it very secret. I think that was one of the hardest things I ever did was trying to figure out how to plan a whole trip, because you can't actually you can't have your deputies help you.
Yeah.
So there was only 2 people in my shop that knew anything about it, but you have to go and meet with all the reporters and the photographers and the pooler and get it all organized. But they can really keep a secret. And so this trip was able to happen. And yes, of course, it takes some planning. But Katie, this is a different region than before. I mean, it's obviously a lot safer in Iraq than it was in years past, a lot because of the great work that men and women in uniform have done there.
Yeah, and to the point about this not being planned, I wonder if President Trump wasn't actually going to go to Florida, and this was the plan all along for him to go visit the troops.
I think they said that they were. One of the reports is that they would have left from Florida if the shutdown had not happened. Yeah.
But to your question about Iraq and the situation there, I thought the most important thing he said was about striking ISIS from Iraq. He specifically said that we are not going to be taking troops out of that country, which I think reassures allies in the region that, look, although we are taking our troops out of Syria, we are allowing the Israelis to bomb Iran to take care of the Iranian problem. Saudi Arabia is stepping up with money. There are concerns still about the way Turkey is going to handle the Kurds as an ally against ISIS in the region. However, him saying today, we're not leaving Iraq, there are 5,000 troops there, we are going to strike ISIS if we need to from this position, shows that we're still in the fight, despite them. They're very specific about their language. They say territorial caliphate, which indicates that the fight is not over. We've taken a lot of their land back. A lot of the cities have been taken back thanks to the United States and people in the region. However, the fight is ongoing. We saw a Christmas Day ISIS attack in Iraq just yesterday. But one fun thing, too, that is joyful is that the Iraqi government declared for the first time officially just before Christmas a national holiday for Christians there after ISIS tried to wipe them out in a genocide over the last couple of years. So lots to celebrate, and I think lots of calmed nerves in some ways from the president and what he said today.
And we should mention, Doug, also it's not just the military that the president gives a lift to, it's the diplomatic corps that is there as well. I mean, people across the government, from the State Department, but also even like USDA that helps get agriculture back and up and running in the country.
I can't say enough. Look, we're all partisans. We all have views here. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit later on, but we're all Americans. And as an American, I'm very proud of the president for going, particularly at a time, as Katie says correctly, there are questions about our foreign policy vis-a-vis the pullout completely from Syria and half the troops from Afghanistan. I think this is real good for America, and I just think on a day like today, we ought to just say thank you to the president. Again, I have many differences with him. We'll hear, but thank you for standing up for our troops. the battle against ISIS is not over. I'm glad he made that clear, and hopefully we hit them not only territorially, but wherever they are.
And we have a new, the new government in Iraq is there, so they can be reassured as well that there's going to be somebody there to help.
Precisely.
But also, that's important for our national interests as well in the long run.
And there's been a lot of questions, Mark, on where the president actually stands when it comes to foreign policy. And so, yes, this was an opportunity for him to go meet with our troops because they're serving while everyone else is celebrating the holidays. But the president, this was a moment for him as well because a lot of people wanted to hear with him on what exactly his military strategy is. And, you know, there's this conflicting view of the more libertarian point of view of having a strong military presence, but also not getting involved with every single country. But the thing that people are going to run into when it comes to this, and we'll get to it later on the show, is what happens when you're already there in a nation and fighting that war, and you have this war of not wanting to this view of not wanting to nation build, but you're there and you cannot withdraw those troops and open up a vacuum like the last administration did.
The answer is you have to nation build.
Reassured, I wouldn't say nation build, but if we're there, we can't open up a vacuum.
Dana, to your earlier point, too, about the State Department and other people working in Iraq on behalf of America, this also boosts the morale of local forces and local Iraqi leaders to know that the President of the United States is there not only just as a show of force, but to listen to what they have to say, to get briefings on the ground from the people who are working on these issues, and talking to our military leaders as well to get some perspective. I know the President gets criticized for maybe not taking the advice of people around him, but he does go and meet with people and listen and then makes his decision. So getting that information from the ground will be very important.
Yeah, nothing like a first-hand account, Tom.
Yes, well, the reason I was wondering about the advanced planning of this is, wouldn't this have been an excellent time for him to announce his changes in Syria after having visited Iraq? If he knew he was going.
Especially if he was going to say that he has no plans to withdraw troops from Iraq because those troops can be staged to deal with ISIS, then you might not have had 10 days of confusion.
Yes, and a lot of people, I thought the overreaction to the fact that he announced it, Mattis resigned, and then we saw the talking heads were saying, this is it, everything's imploding, Mattis is the only one we ever trusted, he was the only adult. I thought it was overdone, but just if I want to second guess the president's decision, this might have been a nice time to announce the Syria strategy.
Right. Well, and when he made the announcement to take the troops out, you know, the reason there was confusion is because there wasn't this explanation that he gave today. He didn't say when he announced this that, look, we still have this place in Iraq. He did generally talk about allies being able to take care of these problems, not on our behalf, but stepping up to the plate in their own backyard and defeating ISIS in a way that's beneficial to their own countries. So it would have been helpful at the beginning if he said, look, we're getting out of Syria because we have plenty of resources in Iraq to deal with the ISIS problem. We're going to continue to fight ISIS despite taking away their territory. Of course, that war against the terrorist group is not done because they do exist in places like Europe and the United States. So I think he could have avoided some of that by putting this out.
It was rocky, and it seemed like the president was more concerned at the time. I get what he was saying, but it seemed like he was more concerned on reassuring Americans that he was trying to keep a campaign promise instead of actually telling us what he planned on doing.
We have serious problems. ISIS is not defeated. Syria is a cauldron. And Afghanistan, where, frankly, the Taliban is doing better and better, and President Ghani is on the ropes politically, all of this is bad for the United States. So while I absolutely applaud this vision and what the president said, we have huge national security challenges in the region that we have to deal with.
Doug, I did want to ask you one last thing in the minute we have remaining, which is the importance of a president, any president, to be able to use not just the bully pulpit, but the entire echo chamber to their advantage. And announcing something just on Twitter doesn't seem to scratch that itch.
You know, what I learned when I worked for Bill Clinton is getting that echo chamber going, orchestrating it, as you were describing as a senior press officer and then press secretary, is a hugely important task. And while President Trump controls the narrative frequently with Twitter, he doesn't have the echo chamber and the support.
Doesn't dominate it.
He doesn't.
He could have. But it's anyway. We're like, you know, the media. We're like a bunch of raccoons in a room full of disco balls. Oh, it's like looking all over the place.
That's
really
a lot of fun. It's my day of the party.
Yeah, no, that's right. When you come to the 5, Tom Shalhoub with me, It's going to be a party, for sure. All right, it's day 5 of the partial government shutdown, and neither side is budging. Brand new video of President Trump up next.
It's day 5 of the partial government shutdown over border wall funding, and both sides are refusing to budge. President Trump not backing down. Here's what the president said just hours ago in Iraq.
How long do you think the shutdown will last, Mr. President?
Whatever it takes. I mean, we're going to have a wall. We're going to have safety. We need safety for our country, even from this standpoint. We have terrorists coming in through the southern border. Can we have some drones? Can we have technology? Technology is bells and whistles. You have to have a wall. You have to have protection. So when you say how long is it going to take, when are they going to say that we need border security? When are the Democrats going to say? Don't forget, the Democrats all agreed that you need a wall until I wanted it.
House Minority Leader and soon-to-be Speaker Nancy Pelosi is pushing back against the president, claiming, quote, he's using scare tactics that are not evidence-based, and it's wrong. Former acting ICE Director Thomas Homan is responding to Pelosi by saying she's the one who has it all wrong.
She's 100% wrong, so let me educate Ms. Pelosi. As far as crime coming across the border, ICE arrested 138,000 criminals last year. These are people who entered the country illegally and committed a crime against a citizen of this country.
What kind of crime?
Over 2,000 homicides, over 11,000 weapon violations, over 11,000, almost 12,000 sexual assault crimes, sexual crimes. So crime does come across that border. They just didn't miraculously appear in the United States to enter the country illegally.
You know, my take on this is a huge opportunity to do comprehensive immigration reform. Both sides are dug in on positions I think don't make a lot of sense for the country and indeed even their political positions. Wouldn't it make sense to do a wall, enhanced border security, a fence, as the president talked about, in exchange for a path to citizenship for the Dreamers and some right for those 10 or 11 million who are here illegally to stay? Doesn't that make sense, Dana?
Well, I think so, but I do want to defer to Katie, who was there for that interview this morning and was from Arizona. I mean, we've talked about comprehensive immigration reform for years, over 3 different presidents.
Doesn't make it wrong.
I agree.
Here's the problem with comprehensive immigration reform is it's too big of a project to do when you have a serious crisis at the border at this point in time. Border security is different than amnesty for millions of people who are either here illegally or who brought their children over when they were children without having gone through the proper process for citizenship. And so when the president talks about wanting a wall or a barrier, he's correct when he says that where we built these things in Yuma, Arizona, for example, in places in El Paso, in San Diego, the traffic there has stopped. And if you look at the criminal element that is bringing these children and these people up through Mexico and using them as human shields to get into the country, you have to take a look at the real issue of the law being changed there. And I've always said that open borders are inhumane borders. You had the report today of the second child dying while in Border Patrol custody. That is not a result of Border Patrol. That is a result of sick kids showing up at the border and the United States giving them care that they have not seen for 2,000 miles along their journey. And so it complicates things enormously when you throw in comprehensive immigration reform when the president is trying to solve a problem that is an emergency right now.
Look, I agree with Katie, but I think you're an optimist. But
I try.
You're not where your party is right now.
I know.
You're very reasonable. But as it relates to your party, it's become an open borders party. And they have gone from wanting to ban ICE to, and let me say this, the president tried to move on this last week, and he got a major blowback. And I said it last week. The president, if he wants to lose his base, this was the moment that he was going to lose his base because he was caving. And so now the president is going to the opposite direction and saying, look, I can't budge on this. I tried to go with my people with this. I tried to get some type of reasonable approach. They're not having it. And so the Democrats, you got to give me some wiggle room right here. What you guys want to put on the table is let's just talk about DACA. Well, that doesn't solve the problem that's on the border. And we went through this with Ronald Reagan before where we gave you amnesty and said, hey, you're going to get border security. And it never came. And so the American people just aren't going to go for it.
Tom, am I off base?
Well, where you were off base was adding those 10 or 11 million. That's, if he wants to throw DACA into some deal, I think people would go for it, but they're not going to go with the broad end.
The deal in 2013 included the 10 or 11 million. It got 68 votes in the Senate. That's why I
the
said
DACA is more complicated than just giving citizenship to people who were brought here as children from Mexico or Central America, because then the question is, well, if their parents are still in the country illegally, do they then get to stay? It's a complicated issue of family units and whether they get to stay. It's not just a simple piece of legislation. There are serious questions surrounding how that gets done. But when it comes to the president and what they have offered, incoming Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney was on Fox News Sunday over the weekend, and he actually said that they've come down from their $5.7 billion number. They did not say what the number was, but Democrats, they're hoping, will come to some center when it comes to the funding. And we're talking about maybe like $3 billion here.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think we're talking
for political
about
reasons
fundamental political positioning.
They don't like the optics of the wall. That's what it is. They don't like
I agree with that.
Or the sound of it even.
They know, but the president is involved. We know you're not going to just get a physical wall on all aspects of the border. They've called it the border wall system. He's talked about adding technology to it. But the symbolic measure of the president having accomplishment when it comes to the wall is what Democrats are against.
Right, and I'm saying that's exactly right. There has to be a compromise around a fence, enhanced border security, and some path to citizenship for DACA residents, notwithstanding the issues.
But that's a separate issue. I don't understand why Democrats keep lumping it together. There's border security, and then it's taking care of the people that are already here. But you can't talk about fixing a problem. Fixing a problem with the kids that are here that have nothing to do with the border itself.
I think that Democrats, I think that if Barack Obama would have decided to build a wall to stop an influx of illegal immigration, the Democrats would have gone for it. We've seen gross hypocrisy between what Barack Obama did on this issue and what Trump
they should hammer that a little bit more. I mean, because the Democrats did vote for border security, fencing, things that look like a wall. But it's not just it's a symbolism of the wall. So a lot of this is a political symbolism fight. The other thing is the shutdown so far has been a little bit symbolic. Now, if you're one of the 900,000 who's being furloughed, that's important. That is a big deal to you. And I hope they can take comfort in the fact that the government has done back pay for them. But the first real day of the shutdown is actually today, because the president gave Christmas Eve as a holiday as well. So this is actually the first real day. We'll see what sort of pain comes. But I think they end up at like 3.3 billion.
Quickly, isn't this ridiculous, the whole thing?
Yes.
The shutdown, the fight, all of this.
Yes.
Isn't this the worst?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it's ridiculous. I think I don't think it's bad for the president to throw a temper tantrum and say, give me my $5 billion or you're not going to get your government back. I think to me to me it's a bad mistake politically and substantively.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
We will see.
You win.
All right.
Well, we will come back and talk about UMass Amherst taking Campus PC to a new level after asking a student to remove a sign condemning Nazis. Really the case. Just wait until you hear why. Next.
Another new example showing how political correctness is going too far. The University of Massachusetts Amherst coming under fire after requesting a student remove a sign she put up on her dorm window that cursed at Nazis because it created a mixed emotion on campus and was not inclusive. The student reportedly put the sign up after someone drew a swastika over a Happy Hanukkah message. The university now releasing a statement on its Facebook page saying, quote, the university emphatically rejects Nazis and any other hate group and respects the students' right to display the sign. You know, Doug, we were talking about this before this segment, and my problem with leftists is this. They really don't understand freedom of speech. They think hate speech is not protected by the Constitution, which it is. What is your viewpoint on that?
Well, my view is I don't have any trouble with the sign. I don't have any trouble with the language. I do have problems with a student who defaced a Happy Hanukkah sign with the sign and symbol of the Nazi Party. I wish UMass Amherst spent more time trying to figure out who had defaced the sign and disciplining the student rather than making a ridiculous statement that means nothing about a sign that absolutely is right, reasonable, and appropriate.
So, Katie, there's two parts to this. First of all, it is obviously wrong for them to deface the sign. Nobody stands up with Nazis.
It's vandalism. And if it's
vandalism.
they should be charged for it.
For vandalism, period. That's what you charge them with. And then there's the other hand of freedom of speech. You can't kick the student out, but you can have students that are on campus that disagree with Nazis and say, hey, actually, we don't like you. We won't support you.
Yeah, well, vandalism and defacing signs is not freedom of speech.
Right.
But I will say I'm just confused about this. So, you know, leftists want to punch Nazis, but this university is saying, well, we're going to condemn Nazis, but we're not going to do it by using the F word.
Right.
And if you use the F word, we're going to take your sign down and then ask you maybe to use nicer language when you're condemning Nazis. This is the problem when you pick and choose, right? This is a college campus. All these people are adults. Maybe they can make the case that because it's being displayed from a dorm room that not everybody should have to look at the F word. But the bottom line is universities completely try to redraw the rules every time, and therefore nobody knows what the rules are. The First Amendment covers everything, and the point is when a face is or a sign is defaced, you have freedom of speech, which allows you to then condemn that action.
That's
so
right.
more people are going to see her sign condemning it rather than being on the other side of the hate group, right? But them trying to regulate this by sending letters and feeling unsafe is absolutely ridiculous. Grow up and deal with it.
So, Dana, my day job at Campus Reform, we covered all of this type of anti-free speech stuff every single day. Do you think we as a society have done our kids a disservice by not educating them on the freedoms of the world, and we're codifying?
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of those,
the babies.
You know, the polls that say that they'd be happy with striking the First Amendment.
Yeah.
That's also, you know, that's like a big one. I do think, though, that the university itself goes on in a Facebook post to say, a poorly worded email from Resident Life staff asking students to take down the sign does not reflect the values of the campus. So I don't know if they're just trying to blame a student for this. Maybe not. I could say on a campus, this is what you could call a teachable moment.
Yeah. How about some more Holocaust education?
Well,
that would be a good thing.
Well, it's just not that, though, Tom. And to Dana's point, maybe it was one of those moments where the one person just goofed up. But this is not an isolated event. There's school after school after school not understanding what freedom is in this country. Isn't that a problem?
It's a huge problem. And the thing is, there's a reason we're confused about this, and we didn't know what they meant because they don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
Because they see the word Nazi and everybody freaks out and they start firing off emails. The other day, high school in New York did Sound of Music, and they had to write a disclaimer in the program because there was a swastika in the Sound of Music. We know why there's a swastika in it, because there's Nazis in it. And when they had the disclaimer and they say, we abhor hate in all of its forms.
Right.
And my 9-year-old said to me, Dad, don't they realize the Nazis are the bad guy in that play?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, they should realize that.
Lawrence, yeah.
Because it seems like, Katie, their whole issue with this entire thing was the F word.
The problem is that there is actually a very, very serious problem with anti-Semitism
That's right.
on campuses across the country. The BDS movement is alive and well. But because the left has called everybody a Nazi who dares to be a conservative, they've completely devalued the term. So when you have a real incident of a Hanukkah sign being defaced with a swastika, the focus is not on that. The focus is on a woman who decided to condemn the Nazi sign with her own sign that happened to feature the F word that was being used against Nazis.
This is what happened.
It doesn't address the real question.
That's why anti-Semitism and anti-Holocaust education is so important, because Katie's absolutely right.
We got to educate our kids. We got to go. Right. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is being called out for politicizing Christmas with her Jesus comparison. You'll see next.
Well, Democratic it girl Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez creating a new controversy after tweeting out a Merry Christmas message and implying that newborn Jesus was a refugee. The progressive politician is being slammed for politicizing the holiday, but it's not the only criticism she's receiving. Outgoing Democratic Senator Claire McCaskill with some harsh words about the incoming congresswoman.
I'm a little confused why she's the thing, but it's a good example of what I'm talking about, a bright and shiny new object. Came out of nowhere and surprised people when she beat a very experienced congressman.
Senator McCaskill not stopping there. She's also calling out Ocasio-Cortez's big government ideas.
I hope she also realizes that the parts of the country that are rejecting the Democratic Party, like a whole lot of white working class voters, need to hear about how their work is going to be respected and the dignity of their jobs and how we can really stick to issues that we can actually accomplish something on. The rhetoric's cheap. Getting results is a lot harder.
Okay, Pastor Jones, I first want to get to the Jesus analogy, and then we'll get on to McCaskill's comments.
Well, first
is this an accurate thing for her to say?
No, it's not. And it's important for the left to understand the message of Christ. They only want to use Jesus when it's convenient for them, and then they got the whole story about Jesus wrong as well.
So he wasn't a refugee.
He was not a refugee.
Okay,
exactly.
just want to be clear.
But to pivot on this, when it comes to the Democrats, you guys are way too emotional. You guys don't vet your candidates. You guys don't vet. You guys get so
Obama, whatever
invested,
you think was Mr. Cool.
Get so invested in the personality of the candidate. For example, The Guardian just did a article today going through Beto O'Rourke's voting record. Right? He talks about how such a progressive he was. He voted Republicans for the majority of the time until he decided that he was going to be the next president of the United States or senator of Texas. But everybody loves Beto, but it's really not about Beto's and what he will do. It's about how Beto makes you feel. And I think that's the big problem with Democrats.
Isn't feeling part of politics?
Yes.
And as to Claire McCaskill, she's certainly right. I mean, you have to be a moderate in most of America. On the two coasts, not so much. But in middle America, where the Democrats reclaimed seats in states that Donald Trump largely won, it was moderates, not progressives, who won. And Claire McCaskill is a proof positive of somebody who fell victim to the left-wing drift of the Democratic Party. I wish I didn't have to agree with you on that, Lawrence, but sadly I do.
But Dana, we are seeing this far-left shift nationally with the new freshman class of Congresswomen in particular. Is there a way for them to kind of swing back, or is the party in this place, the Democratic Party in this place, where they're really having this struggle between the moderates and middle America and the leftists on the coast?
It's going to be one of the most exciting things to watch in 2019 and going into the 2020 election. Red state Democrats are definitely on the endangered species list. Claire McCaskill has been on this goodbye tour. She's done a lot of interviews. I think that we're going to see a lot more of her, and actually I think that would be good.
I think it would be very good.
I mean, she's actually quite liberal, but she tried to talk as if she were moderate. It didn't help her win in Missouri. Obviously, she lost. And I think that as a check on some of the newer energy, but the Democrats needed that new energy too.
Right.
So they wouldn't have won back the House without it.
So, Tom,
they've got their intention.
The question is, are the kids, right, the younger Democrats, going to tell people like Claire McCaskill, look, your time is over. You're a loser. I won my district. We're the new party now. We don't need your lectures.
Yes. And Claire McCaskill's playing dumb there. I'm a little confused as to why she's so popular. She's not confused. She knows why she's popular. And she did unseat the establishment. And I think Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez she's anti-establishment. And I think people in the, we talk about the forgotten people and the Trump voter. There could be some crossover here. And I think President Trump should take note, because the establishment Democrats, they don't like these fiery leftists, and I think there's some crossover there to be taken advantage of.
She says a lot of things that I vehemently disagree with, but she does say interesting things about the federal government, and she was a Bernie Sanders essentially her mentor, and a lot of people who voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary voted for Donald Trump. So,
as the only one on this panel who probably wants to see a Democrat elected in 2020, I'd like her to just go away, be quiet.
She's not going away.
Well, I hope she does, and I hope Nancy Pelosi gets to her and says to her she'd do better for herself to be silent for a while, because she is not either the face or the voice of the Democratic Party that I grew up with, know, and continue to support.
But she's the new face of the Democratic Party. She's 29 years old. Do you think that they're underestimating her?
Look, they're underestimating her, and I think Republicans are underestimating too. You can't laugh at socialism when they start winning.
Okay? Don't laugh.
She's not the only one.
Take it seriously.
She's not the only one, though.
Right.
There are waves of these Democratic
There's a lot of the
candidates,
freshmen
and it's because of the rise on these college campuses where these kids are taught that socialism works. They feel like it works. We got to stop laughing at, but to go back to Claire McCaskill, she is the Jeff Flake, okay, of the Democratic Party. All these people start talking once they lose. And so it doesn't matter after you lose. If you're really bold, talk before you lose.
He didn't even lose. He resigned.
Yeah. Well, he couldn't win.
He's a loser. He couldn't
saw
win.
his poll numbers
right, but she
in
lost.
Arizona.
At least when you can recognize that.
At least she had the courage to run and fight it out and lose with dignity instead of retire early because you knew you couldn't win a primary in your home state and then magically think you could win against Donald Trump in 2020. I think that Claire McCaskill actually has some legitimate things to offer when it comes to what she's saying about red districts that are red because of Trump that were blue before during Obama's
I think also, like Greg has said last week, that AOC says things that are directionally true, which is he said that President Trump does that. It's like, it's not actually accurate. Jesus was a refugee when he was born.
Right.
Was he a refugee later? Yes, when they go to Egypt. Right, so they're fleeing Herod. So it's directionally true. It's like not actually, but at this point, who on the right is actually caring about facts?
I think I care about facts. I think the
but
Democrats.
You're not on the right.
Well, I actually am in the middle, and there are some issues I support right-wing principles, some left-wing principles. I know. But for the Democratic Party, what Claire McCaskill said is right. Talk about issues we can win on, not get into biblical analysis. And
I pray to God that
politics is tough enough to debate. Let's not get into theology.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. We can get into this though. Up next, are alcohol and coffee the key to living past 90? We're going to debate, but I think we all agree.